Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2298. Today we're going to have fun talking about a very special website. You've been hearing about them on the show, classic.com. So sit back, relax, and let's learn a little bit. And be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in Boise, Idaho, with a very special guest by the name of Max Monahan. Max, welcome to Cars Yeah. Do you have any gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
Let's pop it.
All right, as they say, we'll lay some stripes down here. Now, before we get into what you're doing, what's one little thing that people don't know about Maximilian Monahan?
Good question. As somebody who's been all about cool and interesting cars, from exotics to unfound European vehicles, cool 4x4 trucks, where I actually spent about 8 years of my life as a child was in the passenger seat of a Pontiac Aztek. In fact, not just one. My mom loved it so much she bought a second one.
What?
So I'm very familiar with the Pontiac Aztek.
Interesting. Well, the mighty Aztek, yes, interesting vehicle, isn't it? Now, isn't that the same one that was used in Breaking Bad, the series?
Well, pretty close. Yeah, except it was the first one was red and the second one was black. We didn't have the tan, but yeah, I know that car.
All right. Well, yeah. Well, I'm not going to pick on it since your mom bought it, but it's an interesting design. How do I say this nicely? It's an interesting design project, I think, is the way it goes. To me, that car in many ways looks like it was designed by a committee of board members sitting around a table going, well, it needs this, it needs this, it needs this, it needs this. And the poor designer just went, I give up. Okay, you got it all. Because it seems like it's just kind of a lot of different things, right?
Well, unfortunately, it's kind of the reining in of the end of Pontiac, which Pontiac, has such a great story. And there's a lot of respect, for how great those Pontiac vehicles are, especially from the 60s and 70s and even probably the 50s.
The GTO.
Yeah, the GOAT.
Yeah,
of course. Legendary. And then they produced something like the Aztek. But as a user of the Aztek, I can tell you my mom always said she didn't want to be a suburban driver. And I was on the ski team, so we were driving these vehicles all around the Intermountain West going to ski races. And everybody drove Suburbans, which I get. And, I drive a Suburban myself. I've had tons of them. But my mom wanted something different. She's very artistic, etc. So the Aztek came out, and it piqued her interest. But I tell you, as a user of it, to lug skis around and a young kid, and it drives kind of car-like, and the stereo system in the thing was actually really good. And there was so much bass inside. You could fold down the back seats. Have you understood that some hipsters are now buying quirky cars like Aztecs?
Oh, yeah. It's all, everything that's old is new again. I saw somebody the other day wearing bell bottoms that matched about the width of my bell bottoms in junior high. And I just looked at that and I went, well, here it is again. We're back. Right?
Yep.
Yeah,
well, that's the Aztek. I mean, the Aztek, it kind of had that utility of not as great as a Honda Element, right? But of the era, kind of a utility vehicle. But being on the inside was great. Looking at it from the exterior, it was pretty embarrassing walking with my skis at the bottom of the mountain, traveling around to all these different places like Jackson Hole. I'm like, oh yeah, that's my mom's car.
Yeah. Well, now that I know your mom was into those, I am not going to pick on them anymore. So there you go. She was a daring pioneer, as they say. Well, let's get into what you're doing today. Max Monahan is one of the pros at classic.com, and he's also their business development specialist who specializes in helping dealers list their inventory on classic.com's powerful search engine. As a pro, Max is passionate about helping private sellers get the best price possible for their classic trucks through their platform. He is a truck fanatic, by the way. He's a native Idahoan, and at the young age of 14, he began his automotive career as a lot boy at a local dealership. His career includes time as an internet sales manager, photographer. He's been into sales, restoration manager, and consignment specialist. He has also got executive experience with a few specialty dealerships in the Intermountain West region. We'll be back in just a moment, but first a word from our sponsors. They keep the fuel in the tanks here. Or if you drive an EV, the electric charge in the battery. Sit tight and we'll be right back. Years ago, when it was time to renew my collector car insurance policy, my carrier's rates went up. Way up, but my usage was the same and I never made a claim. I didn't even have a ticket. So what's with that? So I turned to American Collectors Insurance. Has your collector car insurance recently raised your rates for no good reason? Tired of paying an annual membership fee? Then it's time to look around and call American Collectors Insurance. I shopped around, I asked friends for recommendations, and found a winner that I can trust. And boy, I'm glad I did. I saved hundreds of dollars every year and slept better at night knowing my baby was properly insured. American Collectors Insurance have been protecting vehicles since 1976. They provided me with an agreed value insurance policy backed by their history of taking great care of their clients. What could be better than that? So give them a call and ask for a quote today. 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. And protect the ones you love like I did with American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. Are you wondering what your collector car is worth these days? Are you thinking about buying a collector car? I know who can help. My friends at Classic.com will help you stay on top of the market so you know which similar vehicles are out there, what they're selling for, what you should pay, and how to price your vehicle. Go to Classic.com/garage, enter your vehicle's information, specs including the year, make, model, mileage, and options, and they will provide you with a list of recent comparable sales. Their powerful search engine is up to date, finding new listings, tracking sales, and keeping you informed, providing data so you can make the right decision. If you're selling a vehicle, they can help as well with their Classic.com Pro division, steering you to a qualified professional who will help. Finding the right vehicle and selling your vehicle is all about timing and exposure. So what are you waiting for? Go to Classic.com/garage and give it a run. That's Classic.com/garage and tell them Mark sent you. For several years now, you've heard me talk about Linkage Magazine. I've been a subscriber since the start. Their talented and creative team brings you a spectacular publication and website that shares the automotive passion from a worldwide perspective. Linkage is about driving, restoring, collecting, and first-hand experience at collector car auctions and more. They bring you real-world values plus rational, experienced opinions on the current markets. They cover the automotive world and the people who share our passions. And Linkage Magazine has grown, mailing you 6 issues annually. Join me on this journey with Linkage. They're geared for the automotive life. You can subscribe at linkagemag.com. All right, Max, we are back. So I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing there at Classic.com, because I become very familiar with the company. Of course, I had your founder and his brother as very early guests here when I first met them both at SEMA when they were doing the FJ projects. Still having fun with that. Of course, Joey has been on the show as well as a pro, and Linda, I've talked to her many, many times about your brand, but now I get to talk to you, and you're wearing a couple different hats. You're a Classic.com pro, and I want to touch on that first, and then we're going to get into how you're promoting dealership involvement on this platform, because it's a really integral and important part of how Classic.com works. But let's start with pros, because you're a bit of a truck guy, right?
Yeah, trucks are my jam. You know, growing up in Idaho, aside from the Pontiac Aztec nightmares that I receive frequently, my dad, on the other hand, he's always been just kind of handyman. You know, he's great carpenter and also very mechanically inclined, motorcycles. So he put me into machines, motorcycles, snowmobiles, etc. Being in a rural area in Idaho, I mean, starting at 3 or 4 years old, you know, on a little Honda 50, I grew up sitting on my dad's lap in his Ford Bronco. And
cool.
It was the Eddie Bauer edition. Yeah, with the, I think it was like in 88. I was born in 1990, so I'm still pretty young-ish. But I remember just being so fascinated with cars, obsessed with cars my whole life, romping around in my dad's truck. And, you know, we'd have plenty of space to not in an urban environment. So my dad would throw me on his lap and let me steer the steering wheel of his Bronco. And he's had Broncos and Blazers, two-door Blazers, Tahoes, et cetera, ever since. So being in the rural world, 4x4s are kind of in my blood because we get a ton of snow here and I like to go skiing. And I grew up ski racing. So, sometimes you got to get to the mountain and you got to put that thing in four-wheel drive. While I appreciate sports cars, and like we all do, we're fascinated by everything motorsports, especially with cars. Being able to get somewhere that is a little undiscoverable or somewhere you've never been before, or the road less traveled, has always intrigued me. And also in Idaho, so much as the West or, the Intermountain West or the Northwest, you have to have a 4x4. So naturally, I would come across trucks that are old farm trucks, 4x4s. And because we don't use a ton of salt up here, we use gravel instead. The metal would stay in good shape of these old classic trucks. And it turned out that, there's a market for these things because in the Midwest or the Northeast, they're running out thanks to the salt on the roads or just the climate. So I was fortunate enough to be around all this good metal that just kind of hangs out. And it was kind of the old classic, look what I found, a good metal truck. And there's a demand for that. So yeah, 4x4 trucks are my jam. There's a lot to learn about. The Ford F-Series specifically is really where I'm at because there's so many different variations just within that. A lot of times we think, the Porsche is like the eighth wonder of the world to understand the taxonomy or the model variations of those. Mm-hmm. But the F-150 is so darn complicated. And so it's fun as a car enthusiast to go for something that's a little more common that everybody can relate to, including myself.
Yeah, back in mid-January, I saw a 96 Ford Bronco Eddie Bauer edition sell for $84,700. And I just went, what? I mean, so yeah, this is coming back. And as you said, you're, especially from my side of the fence, a younger person, that there's an entire generation now, a couple generations behind me that are getting into the cars that they wish they could have when they were a kid, just like when I was a kid in the 70s in high school. There's all these cars I wish I could have. Now it's the 80s, the 90s. But when I saw that, I just shook my head and went, oh my gosh, that blows me away. And that's a big part of what Classic.com is all about. And before we get into how you're working on the dealership side, which is so important, can you explain to people that maybe aren't as knowledgeable yet about Classic.com? Now, if you listen to this podcast, you better darn well be, but maybe you're new. Classic.com, explain to our listeners exactly what the platform is and how it works and why it's one of these, I'll say it's a newer brand, but it's really becoming a go-to for collectors.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I'll take that as a compliment because there's a lot of work that goes into it. We're a small team at Classic.com, and that is growing. It's a very exciting platform to be a part of. And as a car enthusiast, the reason why it's exciting to be a part of is because it's adding a level of transparency that hasn't existed. I think back to even when I was 13 years old, browsing eBay. This is when eBay was actually something, and I don't want to discredit eBay, and it plays an important part of my life growing up. But when you wanted to research vehicles and not only see great photos or see, what was produced, vehicles that you can't see as a rural person or somebody who lives in a rural area, cars that aren't available readily, or understand more about the catalog of the entire vehicle market that's out there, Classic.com really, really provides a lot of transparency, very clear information. The design is completely uncluttered, and it's a bit of a resource for not only enthusiasts, other professionals, but also dealerships. Classic.com is more so of a search engine for vehicles than just another classified website. And that's what I'm excited to be a part of.
Yeah, it's tremendous what you guys are doing. I love it. And as I look at the car market, and like I mentioned, that Eddie Bauer Bronco that sold for so much money, this is a great way for people to realize that what they have is really worth something, or maybe it's not as worth as much as they thought by relationships to other brands. I have an E46 M3 I bought new in 05, and
Sweet.
I'll throw this little line in the water. I'm afraid to do this. I might start getting a lot, because I'm thinking about letting it go. And so, okay, here come the emails and the text. I will at some point, maybe in the next year or two, because I'm looking at getting another Porsche like the one I sold last summer, or different than that car. But anyway, that's another story. You can learn about it if you don't listen to this podcast regularly. But at any rate, it's wonderful because I can go and look at the market and go, okay, this is what real cars are selling for. I can look at them. I can go and see where they sold and what kind of options they have. And are my prices realistic to the market? Because the last thing you want to do is, say, watch an auction on TV. You see a car go over and you go, oh, I have a car like that. And it sold for X. And you think all of a sudden your car's worth X and maybe your car is Y, or maybe it's not so Y. it's not as good.
Sure.
Yeah. So what you guys are doing is absolutely tremendous. And I know what we want to touch on today is another key part, a very important part of your work there at classic.com is working with dealerships. And I'm seeing more and more dealerships going to platforms to sell other platforms to sell their cars because they're realizing I can't get the reach that some of these other platforms have. And eBay is a good example of that. I recently was selling some Porsche stuff, and instead of going to the Porsche PCA Club website classified, I went out to eBay because the reach is so much bigger. Mm-hmm. And it's worldwide versus my local Porsche club. Nothing against them, but if you want to sell something, you want to sell it. It's the same with selling on Amazon. And that's why you see all these mom and pops opening Amazon stores because they can never have that kind of reach. So let's talk about how you're helping and promoting dealers and why dealers should give Max a call.
I appreciate that. Just to backtrack a second there, I find it really interesting when we talk about, is my car worth more money or is it not nearly as great as I think it is? Mm-hmm. So what classic.com really does a great job of is taking the emotion out of the equation. So if you have a Mercedes, 1972 Mercedes SL in your garage, or your mom does, or your friend does, and you have she has all these great memories, or he or she has all these great memories, you can go to classic.com and have an unbiased view of what that vehicle is worth. And that is so valuable from many different aspects, not only as an enthusiast or somebody who's owner, title holder of that vehicle, or as a dealer who's potentially interested in consigning this car for somebody. It really takes the emotion out of the valuation experience. You really can't argue with data, right?
Right.
And there aren't a lot of places out there to obtain very accurate data that classic.com provides. So that's one of the things that attracted me to classic.com because those have always been the challenges. I mean, I think my 1988 Suburban's worth $20,000, but it's probably only worth $10,000, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's an important thing. You mentioned emotion because for most of us car people, like diehard car people, listeners to this show, we do get emotional about our cars. And sometimes we can get the red mist or the fog or whatever you want to call it about our vehicles and what they're really worth. And the same thing when you go to buy a car. I'll tell you a funny story. Years ago, a friend of mine wanted to buy an old Porsche. And we were in high school, and he had saved up his money, and we drove all the way up to LA from San Diego to look at this car. And he said, I want you to come with me to talk me out of buying this car. And I said, what? He said, well, I'm going to get up there. In my mind, I've already bought it. And I don't want to do that because I haven't even seen it yet.
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah. And he said, so you point out all the bad stuff while I'm sitting there pulling money out of my pocket. Now, he didn't listen to me because he really did already had paid for it. I mean, he got there and he's like, oh my gosh. And I'm going, Robert, did you lift the carpet? You can see through the floors on this thing, dude. But he bought it and he learned a lot of lessons that way. But the emotional part of car buying can get crazy. And not to step too far back into pros, but that's another part of what classic.com pros is doing, is you guys become, our objective, I should say, on this to take away that, oh, this was grandpa's car. It's worth so much money. Well, the buyer doesn't care about your grandpa, right?
Right. It's so true. And, the transparency thing is huge. I mean, I think back to when I was a young man with a little bit of cash in my pocket and I wanted to go out and buy a vehicle, and I'd go to a dealership and the experience was what the industry has always been.
Yeah, usually not much fun.
Usually not much fun at all.
Right.
And you have no real comps unless you're really dedicated to understanding the market. And that takes time. And, Classic.com solves all of that. One thing that, as somebody who wears a lot of hats at Classic.com, which I'm excited to describe more. But one thing I also do is I curate any Ram or Dodge Ram or Ford 4x4 or pickup truck that comes into our system. So when those vehicles come into our system, we have a curation process. And there's about 15 of us that curate vehicles, or we handle specific makes, brands, markets. So when you go to Classic.com and let's say you type in 1988 Suburban, you'll be presented with a Chevrolet Suburban or a GMC Suburban, etc. Now, those are different markets, so they're buckets. And this is something that is not provided on typical listing platforms. And I really want to stress this about Classic.com, that we are not just another listing platform. We're an aggregate of vehicles that come in from many different sources, and the information is presented in a very clear, transparent way. How do we do that? Well, we curate the vehicles. So many times where vehicles are submitted to us or obtained through a data feed, they'll come in, and it's very common to have some sort of information from the source that isn't actually accurate. And I don't blame them. I've owned car dealerships. I understand that blue versus purple vehicle, etc. But there are actual curators behind the scenes at Classic.com. We're not just a server, we are actual people behind the scenes. So when a truck comes in, like my 1988 Suburban for sale, and it comes into Classic.com and it's on the market for sale, my truck has had a repaint. So it's not an original vehicle. So it's been repainted. So we call that a restored original vehicle because it still has original engine, original interior, etc. But it's been repainted. That is very valuable information. That's a data point that we use to understand the values of vehicles because we can pull comps via similar conservation status. So on Classic.com, not only do we have these great buckets of vehicles, like the Ford Highboy, which was it wasn't even a marketing term by Ford. It was just a common, like, oh, that thing's got a 2-inch lift from the factory, and it's got 4-wheel drive, long bed, etc. We'll prescribe a conservation status. So whenever you look at a vehicle detail page on Classic.com, you will see a conservation status that will tell you what kind of I don't want to say condition, but how accurate is this vehicle? Is this a restored original vehicle? Is it a Resto Mod Custom? Is it a highly original vehicle, which we know in the Porsche world, a highly original 1968 Porsche versus a Singer Porsche, which is a Resto Mod Custom,
a very expensive one.
Classic.com, yeah, very expensive. So Classic.com provides that little additional human touch that a lot of other listing platforms don't allow for.
Cool. I love it. Yeah, the F-250 Highboy. Yeah, there's another one. Yeah, another one's become a collectible. I think those were late 60s
Crazy.
to late 70s, 67, 68, wasn't that? To 77, 78 somewhere. You would know better than me, but yeah, same time period. Yeah, those have become collectible as well. Well, this is very cool, and I would encourage listeners to check out Classic.com. You can sign up, subscribe there. You can reach out to the folks there and learn a whole lot about everything we talked about and a whole lot more. I want to talk a little bit about what I call driving inspirations. And I know you've got somebody in your past when you were a bit younger that helped you grow in your career path. And you talk about, I think his name's Hal, right?
Yeah, there's so many. Being a car person throughout your life, there's a handful of people I can rally off. Yeah, Hal, he saw something in me as a 24, 5-year-old man, and I was ready to spread my wings a little bit. And as somebody who was relatively spoiled working in the car industry, especially in the collector car industry, with many different vehicles, I was kind of riding the wave of Porsche accelerating and being in a ski resort town as a salesman. Porsches were extremely prevalent, and it was really fun to be a part of, but it also kind of priced me out because I always thought I would have a 356. That was always kind of like the dream car for young Max. And I was priced out of that. So I went, where can I find some other cars? And this mentor of mine, he invited me to go to Europe to an RM Sotheby's auction in Milan, and my eyes were completely opened up to what else is out there in the world.
Yeah.
And here I am, an Idaho boy, but kind of privileged in a ski resort town in Sun Valley, Idaho, with a bunch of Porsches and some Ferraris, etc. And then I went, oh my gosh, there's something called a Lancia Fulvia that is similar in quality to a 1965 Porsche 356 that may be worth $100,000 now, and this Fulvia is only €15,000, and it's from the same era.
Beware.
And the build quality is actually really great.
There's a reason for that, but we won't go into that.
Hey now. I'm a big proponent of Lancia Fulvias, especially like
They're great cars, but they're old Italian cars. So I'm sitting here as a big Porsche fan, especially, I love 356s. I got priced out of that too. Should have bought one, but I won't debate you here. But Lancias, I know lots of people have had Lancias. Wonderful, wonderful cars, but a bit more challenging than an old Porsche.
Well, that's what's funny about them. So Here I am in Boise, Idaho, right?
Yeah.
And I've got Porsche 356s that I've got on consignment in my store, and I've just imported these vehicles from Europe that nobody even knows about, so I have to build marketing around them. And then even before I do that, I have to make sure they run properly. And not only would I take my 356s to my mechanic, but then I handed him some Lancia Fulvias. And he went, oh my gosh, this thing's actually really straightforward and simple. And mechanically, they're really just a carbureted little V4 engine at front wheel drive, 4-speed manual transmission, and a little coupe, and petite and steel bodied, not a ton of plastic, pre the Fiat era. So I found my little niche with those, and Hal encouraged me to continue that. So we built some networks up in Europe, not only Italy, but also the UK, and as some suppliers, and then we'd import these cars and resell them to the United States and say, once again, look what I found and how I'm excited about it, because, I've put thousands of miles on these little front-wheel drive Lancia Fulvias. I've driven up to Montana from Idaho in them. I've had so much fun in these cars. Drove down to Salt Lake, ripped them around. They're so much fun. And so we had a great little business. But yeah, that was my one of many mentors, but one that really made an impact and provided me with a lot of confidence to say you can turn your car passion into an absolute profession.
Cool. Well, see, some of that DNA from your mom and the vehicle she picked rubbed off on you to kind of go out there on a limb. Try something different.
Are we comparing an Aztec to a Fulvia now?
I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to pick on you at all for your very wonderful eclectic Italian taste in cars. Ciao, ciao. So I think that's awesome. I'd like to talk a little bit about bucket list deals. And I know, I've had different people from classic.com on the show talk about where you guys are taking the platform, but let's touch on this a little bit. I know you've got maybe a bucket list idea for the business there, and then also one that's kind of a personal journey you'd like to take, I think.
Yeah, correct. Well, business-wise, always being very business-oriented, and what I get to do as a business-oriented person is be a part of a group of people that is trying to better the experience of buying and selling a classic car. I think I've listened to a few of your podcasts where, I thought it was really great where you pulled a friend aside at us or the seller or the owner aside at an estate sale and said, that Mercedes is worth a lot more than what your broker is willing to let it go for. And so that is really our mission. And I'm really excited to be a part of that mission, because when I was younger, as somebody who's naive to walk into a car dealership to buy, an Audi Allroad for too much money, and they go, yeah, of course, we'll take your money. But do you know what really comes with that? Yes. And do you know where this car should be in the market as somebody, who doesn't have a ton of cash as a young kid? So yeah, bucket list wise, it's the overall mission in my mind for Classic.com is to provide further transparency. Now, specifically, especially in the American truck market, we have a very good understanding of where Porsches are, for example. But like I was saying earlier, Ford or Ram or even Chevrolet, there are so many different variants over many, many years. Ford's F-150s have almost been around for 80 years now. So there's a lot of information out there, and to make sense of it is really challenging. So to display that in a way that's very user-friendly on Classic.com is something that we're definitely excited to share with the world. And then on the other end, to do that, we have to invite dealerships onto the platform. And so that's also what I'm really responsible for at Classic.com, is adding dealerships. And I'm proud to say we've got a lot more dealerships than I projected that we would have.
Nice.
And all of our dealership partners are incredible. So are our auction partners, which is what Linda also helps with, but I also chime in every once in a while. But yeah, our goal is to grow the deal. My specific goal with Classic.com is to grow the dealership presence on our website.
Nice. That'll help a lot of people for sure. I'm going to save the second part of this bucket list concept to a drive here, because later in our talk, we're going to talk about going on the ultimate drive. And I know these two things align. So
sure,
keep that thought in mind. All right. A special vehicle in your life. Now, there's probably been so many we could talk for hours, but can you pick just one out? And I think you're going to say Porsche of some kind, right?
I know. Here I am, Idaho cowboy boot wearing truck guy.
Yeah.
But being in the resort community, I was exposed to a lot of things, and naturally, Porsche is just such a great brand. I think everybody can agree. But yeah, one of the greatest stories I've ever experienced was Hal actually found a Porsche, what looked to be a Porsche 993 roof. And
Ooh.
He forwarded me some photos while he was down racing in Florida, GT4 Club Sport. And I just saw a few photos of it, and I went, I don't care if it's real, clone, modified, whatever. Buy that car. That thing's amazing. It had tartan red seats in the roof embroidery in green and the roof gauges, and it was a Guards red turbo, Turbo S 4S conversion into a BTR turbo. So we further learned, and manual 6-speed, but just like being a 90s kid, seeing a car that I would play on Gran Turismo, and then actually having the capability to maybe experience that vehicle, I was very excited. Hal also agreed. He thought it was a great vehicle. So purchased that, had it shipped here to Idaho. Definitely had a few things that we needed to sort out. Nothing major, just, an incredible car. And that vehicle was actually sent to Germany and tuned by Roof themselves. So it wasn't an actual BTR, but it was a Roof BTR conversion.
Mm.
But what was really exciting about that is not only do we get to possess these cars, but through a foundation and a fundraiser in our resort town, where we invite participants to bring their supercars out, or any vehicle they would like to participate in. We closed down 4 miles of highway. It's called the Sun Valley Tour de Force. And I got to drive that Porsche roof conversion, or tribute, I should say, in that event. And it's 4 miles of highway that's closed down by the sheriff's department. And we also donate the funds that come in from participating in the event to the Hunger Coalition. So it felt like a really great way to give back to our community,
nice.
Especially a community I grew up in. Yeah. And it's been going on in various forms since 2009. So actually to participate in it was great. And then also to drive a 1996 993 roof tribute car was hyper exciting, only because everybody said, this is your first time doing this event, actually like driving in the event. Don't look down at the speedometer. Don't do that. You just feel the car out. Okay, so here I am at the starting line, do a launch, shooting through the gears. It's in the beautiful Sawtooth Mountains of Idaho, which are some of the best kept secrets in the United States. But I'm ripping down this road, and I can feel the front end of this car, like Porsches do. I may as well have been driving a 1968 911, because the front end started to axle around a little bit. And I went, I must be going like 130 miles an hour. And I looked down at the speedometer, and I'm doing like over 170 miles an hour. I'm like, okay, this is why they told me not to look at the speedometer, because it's a car from 1996 that's a conversion, albeit by Roof, but still an older car, turbocharged, very raw driving experience. And I went across the line there, and they measured me at 178 miles an hour. And I won't forget the adrenaline that I had pulling into the pits off the side of the road and seeing that speed in this old 1996 Porsche. It was fabulous. So much fun.
Fast. Holy cow. Wow. What an experience. I've been really lucky to have Alois Roof, his wife, Estonia, and his daughter, Aloisa, most recently, as guests here on Cars Yeah. So the whole family has been on board.
No way.
Yeah, and I've been lucky because I visited Roof in Pfaffenhausen twice now. Got to drive his Yellowbird back in 2006 when I was there.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, not even as nearly as close as you. I wouldn't even have dared to go that fast. But wow, what an experience. So I'm a car psychologist. I'm going to crawl into your skull here. If you were reincarnated as a vehicle, what would you be?
All right. Well, as much as we have fun with Porsches, for day-to-day use and for the adventures that I like to do, I would probably go with being a Ford Super Duty, probably a more modern Super Duty. However, I would want it modified by a company that doesn't do modifications for Ford. And this is a call out to them to modify some Fords or provide aftermarket support. A company called American Expedition Vehicles is very popular in modifying not only Jeeps, but also Rams. In fact, they are a factory-supported aftermarket company where they do full stamped hoods, bumpers. They'll cut fenders and throw 40-inch tires on a 3500 or a 2500 Ram, and they make expedition vehicles, almost Icelandic, where you'll see like Sprinter vans with giant 50-inch tires on them. Yeah. So. And this company is based out of Missoula, Montana, and it's a very fascinating story. And I have no, financial interest in this company at all. But I have friends with AEV Rams and AEV Jeeps, and if they just did it for Ford, which is kind of my brand, I would have to be reincarnated as a more modern Super Duty AEV modified.
Nice. I kind of see that.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand it. How about a great book? We love books here. Is there a book you could recommend?
Well, this is pretty boring unless you're a total Ford nut. And it's not some nightly light reading, but as somebody who has to, going back to the curation process that we do at Classic.com, understanding the taxonomy of a vehicle. Not only is it a 1995 Ford F-150, but it's a Ford F-150 with a 306 and a manual transmission and a 4x4, and it's the Eddie Bauer package in a regular cab with a long bed. All of those nuances are captured in this book, which is called The Standard Catalog of Light-Duty Ford Trucks from 1905 to 2002.
Oh, my gosh.
So,
was it 1,000 pages?
This is my Bible.
Yeah.
Let's see. I can look right now. I have it in front of me. How many pages is this bad boy? 357.
Yeah, okay. That kind of makes sense. Yeah, that's a doorstop for sure. So, wow. Well, I'll put a listing to that book so you listeners that love Ford trucks and want to know the whole history can get your hands on this copy. So now the ultimate drive. If I could send you on an ultimate drive, you pick the car, you pick the place, and pick the person. What does it look like for you?
Oh boy, the ultimate drive lately, and this has always kind of been in the back of my mind. I think there's a massive sense of adventure when it comes to vehicles, whether it's driving, down a closed highway for a fundraiser event in the middle of, Sawtooth Mountains of Idaho, or going to Italy and driving around Italy. I think there's an adventure component that really speaks to me. And if I were to do the dream haul, which has always been something I wanted to do, going back to the modified Ford F-250, I would probably, it's always been a goal of mine to drive to the most northern point of North America. And there's a way you can do that via the Alcan Highway in Alaska. So being in the Northwest here, I would love to have an outfitted Ford F-250 4x4, probably not a dually, but I'd like a slide-in camper and throw my fly fishing gear in there and my 2 dogs and drive all the way up to the most northern point of Alaska and fly fish my way up there.
Dead Horse. Isn't that what that's called the way up there? Dead Horse?
Yeah, Dead Horse. That's correct. And yeah, Prudhoe Bay.
Yeah, absolutely. I follow a couple people, and one is a young gal who has been traveling around the world in her Range Rover, and she did that drive all the way through up through Mexico, United States. She's actually Polish, and then up all the way up to that point, and it was kind of fun to follow her video up there of what that was like and how desolate it is on the way up there. Is quite amazing. But all right, well, I'll get to work on getting all the gear ready for you so you can go and take that trip. That sounds like fun. You've taken us on a fun trip today, my friend, and I want to ask you to leave us with maybe some parting thoughts of advice or wisdom.
Yeah, if you're questioning if you should make a purchase on a vehicle, a value, as we all do as car enthusiasts, is this too much money? Is this not enough money? Or when you're selling a vehicle, etc., Classic.com is absolutely there to help. And not only are we just a website, there are legitimate people behind this website. There are real humans like me that are passionate about vehicles and helping other people throughout the process. I guess all in all, if you want to go to Alaska and go fly fishing, and you need a rig to do it, there's cars on or trucks on Classic.com that will absolutely achieve those. I have market alerts set up where I receive notifications via email every morning whenever a cool 4x4 vehicle comes up for sale on the Classic.com platform. Or if you've already done the drive up to Alaska and back down, and now you're back in the continental United States, and you want to get rid of this truck because you've been there, done that, Classic.com is also a place where you can sell your vehicle through a pro, much like myself. And then also there's for dealerships too. I mean, there's so many resources. We didn't discuss the fact that I've owned some dealerships in the past, but just from a valuation standpoint, not only from a dealer perspective, but the valuation tools with Classic.com are so in-depth thanks to our taxonomy. So we're just out here trying to make everybody's life a little bit better.
Most definitely. So listeners, you can find them at Classic.com. Go there, check out the pros, check out if you're a dealer, how you can get involved. I'll put links and connections to Max here and to Classic.com. Of course, they've got a great Instagram site that you should follow as well. And I want to do a little thank you again to Linda, one of your teammates, your colleagues there, who's brought me several guests of late. So Linda, thank you very much. Max, thanks for being so generous today with your time and expertise and sharing definitely the car world that you're in. Until you and I find that next Aztec to buy, I'll see you down the road.
All right, I'll be waving from it if the window works.
Nice way to sign off. That's excellent. How did you discover your path to a fulfilling life? Too many young people flounder in finding an education and a career that fits. But for those who have a passion for cars, trucks, and motorcycles, and who love working with their hands, problem solving, and fixing things, a career as a professional auto technician is incredibly rewarding. Cars Yeah! is pleased to team up with TechForce Foundation, our charity of choice, in bringing scholarships, technical education, and hands-on experience to young people so they can discover a possible future. Join me and lend your support by visiting techforce.org today.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah! Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah!